Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Shotmaker, the podcast that's all about mindset. Today, we are joined by Adam Harris, the Executive Director of the Brewers Guild of Pennsylvania. Prior to becoming Executive Director, Adam spent 16 years in the House of Representatives of Pennsylvania. I think you will find this conversation to be fascinating as Adam shares with us the importance of being part of a community and working together for the common goal. What Adam has done as part of the Brewers Guild over the last 2 years is incredible, and I know you will find his story to be an interesting one. Thank you so much, Adam, for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. Okay, welcome to the Shotmaker podcast. We are joined today with Adam Harris, the Executive Director of the Brewers Guild of Pennsylvania. Adam, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, it's great to be here. It's a windy, kind of miserable day here in central Pennsylvania, but it's always a great day for a podcast. So, thank you for the opportunity to come on and talk about beer. I love advocating for beer, talking about beer, drinking beer. So anything you want to dive into, we can do it.
No, definitely. And, just doing a little bit of research before the show is learning your history is unique in that you were a politician first who then sort of moved in the direction of beer. So can you tell us a little bit about that story?
Yeah, so I did 16 years in the state legislature. I really enjoyed it. The only complaint I would say I would have is it kind of gets a little monotonous towards your final few terms. You're doing the same events year after year. So I thought, I want to do something new. I want to do something exciting. So I started my own LLC, which I had no idea how to do. Thank goodness for Google. I literally Googled most everything I learned about setting up a little company. So I'm a sole proprietor, solo practitioner. So I just had to set up a company for myself. And I have so much more respect now for anyone who's ever gone through doing that. So I did it in January of 2019, right before a global pandemic. That's a great time to kick off a business.
Yes.
But I was a W-2 employee for, dating back to when I was 16 years old. So probably 25 years. So just that shock of, the transition to doing your own taxes, keeping your own receipts and, all those sort of things were very interesting. So every time I see a fellow, self-employed individual, I always tap a beer and buy them a beer if I can. But yeah, it's been great. So I've been with the Brewers for 4 years now. The first two was more of a part-time basis, contract lobbyist, helping a little bit. And then my good friend Dan Libert and I actually switched roles. So I took over as executive director. He's deputy executive director. He does all the tech stuff. I'll be the first to admit I'm terrible with computers. So I do the lobbying, the people aspect, the brewery visits, the lobbying, and then Dan kind of does everything behind the scenes. We have about 200 breweries in our association, which is awesome, from some of the bigger in Pennsylvania all the way down to some of the smaller that may have even just opened during the pandemic. So that becomes interesting and challenging because, a large brewery has a lot of different issues that maybe don't relate to a smaller brewery and vice versa. So we try to get people legislatively kind of all on the same page, like, hey, let's fight for this issue, even though it might not be super important to you this month. And, in a couple months, we're probably going to pay that favor back.
No, that's so fascinating. Tell us a little bit more. I think a lot of times, when we deal with, restaurants, hospitality clients, I think a lot of times they don't realize all of the work that you guys do behind the scenes. It just looks like a fixed expense. Like, do I need to pay it again? But tell us more about what all of the things that you do for your membership during the year.
Sure. I think one of the most interesting things we do is we have a quarterly legal call. So you can jump on with our attorney. You can ask, some fairly basic questions. If it gets into anything in depth, it might need to be a one-on-one consultation. But yeah, so we have, some legal assistance if you have questions about, we always say ask first before making mistakes. You don't want the liquor control enforcement officer showing up and asking you why the heck you were doing that. And something actually new that we're doing, we have an equity and diversity, equity, inclusion committee. So we're going to do the same thing with monthly calls for equity inclusion, where you can call in anonymously, ask about questions, ask how other breweries are handling issues. We also have an internal Facebook page. You can throw out information and, just get a wide swath of answers from all over the state. So it's really just taking a gigantic state and trying to keep everyone kind of connected and discussing what's going on and, so everyone can prosper. We do 2 to 3 in-person events, which are obviously super fun. But that gives you an opportunity, if you're super busy and you're a small brewery in Erie, maybe you would have never had the opportunity to meet Tom Kehoe from Yards. But lo and behold, we have an event in State College. You both come together and you get to hang out and have a beer and talk about how great the Phillies are going to be this year.
Well, exactly. And I feel like that's one of the things when you talk to business owners, the ones that do go out and meet, other breweries or other restaurant owners, I feel like there's so much value there beyond just, oh, we met, it's just that, collective group think that happens at that event, which was always important. But I guess talk a little bit about, the impact of the pandemic, because I actually was at your first event post-pandemic last fall. And it's amazing how much had changed in the industry, during the last 18 months. So talk a little bit about how much your group has assisted during that time to an industry that was incredibly hard hit.
It was awful. It made everyone feel super disconnected. I will say, like, the participation in our legal calls, I think, tripled during that time. A, because people wanted to know what the changing rules were, and B, they just wanted to talk to other human beings to see like what's going on in their neck of the woods. I would say a couple of bright points. In Pennsylvania, a brewery is classified as a manufacturer. So manufacturing was allowed to stay open during the pandemic. So obviously, as you saw, the rules change as far as could people come into your brewery? Could they sit down? You were always allowed to make beer. So at no point during the pandemic did the government ever say, you're shutting down your operation, because it's really hard to restart a brewing operation if you're forced to, completely shut down. So we tried to stay connected as best we can, with one-on-one calls and with the legal calls. I would say the Liquor Control Board was actually really good to us during the pandemic. They approved it. They allowed you to, branch out your licensed premises. Before the pandemic, that would have been probably months and months of paperwork. But literally all you did was you went online and said, I want to extend out through this sidewalk over these 10 feet. And they're like, that's good, do it.
Right.
So it was really cool that, they were able to sort of say, okay, we know you have to scramble to, space people out and to stay open and stay in business. So I think we had a lot of help from the Liquor Control Board. And, the question now is, what changes stay? And
does that go back? Right.
Right. And then with Philadelphia, they're having a few issues now with kind of doing some permitting and kind of making it a little less user-friendly. But, all in all, I bet I could count on one hand the number of breweries that I know closed during the pandemic. And I think that many opened, as crazy as it may sound. So, so we've been able to sort of keep at that kind of same brewery level and, keep everyone moving forward, hopefully.
I know. What was it like joining during the pandemic? Did you feel like it was hard to get your feet on the ground in your position?
It really was. So my first annual meeting when I took over, it was virtual. So we're doing it over Zoom, and it's just not the same as sort of interacting. And I'm still sort of processing. I work from home. So Dan and I just are kind of like out of a home office. So it's just from years and years of chugging into an office every day to I'll tell you what, everybody thinks working from home is the greatest thing ever. 4 years in now, I'm not so sure that it's that great. So I try to find a member brewery at least once or twice a week, take my laptop, set up shop, and just kind of watch them do their thing and try to stay out of the way. Breweries are always busy, whether it's the brewing process or cleaning. And, it is an in-depth process to brew beer. It looks exciting and really sexy from the outside, but brewers will tell you they have 3 jobs. It's cleaning, cleaning, and cleaning. It's kind of like their mantra. It's sterilized, don't have anything get contaminated. So it's fascinating.
Yes. Well, and also I feel like it's the rules that are so hard. I mean, a lot of the newer brewers that we work with, just to understand the things you can do, you can't do, the license. What's your advice to like a new brewery who, maybe has no background in legal, experience? Like, how do they learn all these rules so they know that they're not making a mistake?
Yes. So there's a handful that I'm aware of that I've been dealing with in these past 4 years. You can actually join the Brewers of PA as a brewery in planning. So they would come to our events before they even had a tank, before they had brewed anything other than home brewing, obviously.
Right.
So that would always be my number one suggestion is, come to these events. Our attorney, Ted, is always there. You can ask him questions over beers and he won't bill you, which is fantastic.
It's great.
But just the ability to ask questions beforehand. Or you can we have a discounted new brewery rate. So even if you did open up last month and you realize, wow, I have a ton of questions, like this is overwhelming, you can join our group, and day one, you have access to to all our resources. But it is overwhelming and it changes. And so your enforcement is done actually by the state police. So a liquor control officer is a branch of the state police. So as you know, the state's large and diverse. You might have one officer, looking at an issue this way in Erie, and they might be looking a completely different way at it in Philadelphia. So we have one brewery being treated this way and another brewery being treated that way. So what we do is we try to collect those issues and take them to the central command in Harrisburg and say, look, we respect you guys. Whatever the answer is the answer, but it needs to be the same answer in Erie as it is in Philadelphia. Right. And so a lot of what we're doing a lot of times is just leveling the playing field, making sure everyone knows what the rules are, so they can comply. But yeah, it's a lot of paperwork, and you want to have all your paperwork there if they come by to do the inspection.
I know. Yeah, it's overwhelming, I think, in some respects until they get in it. So of all the brewers that you've met, what would you say, are some of the qualities that make a brewer successful? Like, what are the things that they do, better than some of the ones that struggle a little more?
That's a great question. I think from the most when I think of a successful brewer, I think of a people person. So they're always out in their tap room. They're talking to their customers and asking for real feedback. What do you think about this beer? I'm the brewer. If you don't like it, you don't have to sugarcoat it. But it's interesting though, because everyone comes from such a diverse background. So it's kind of like, I can't really say an accountant makes a great brewer or this. It's kind of a mismatch of all these unique talents that you just have to either hope you have all of them or have a business partner or a great employee that can sort of add to that equation. But yeah, we have a pretty great group.
Yeah, it's true. I feel like there's like this intangible quality that you can't define that makes a brewer. And you don't know what it is.
I can spot them a mile away.
Yes.
I think you're a brewer.
But I don't know why.
Right.
Yes, I completely agree. So I guess taking a step now, kind of with your, kind of background in politics, like all of the stuff that's going on the supply chain. And I know, I've had calls this week where people are really concerned about, rising prices and grain price and all of that. Like, what are some of the things that, you would tell people to do now to be proactive or, I guess, figure out a plan moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing we obviously always let our members know is, we have about 100 associate members in the Brewers at PA. Get to know who they are, because they're probably either one of these people can get you what you need or they know someone that can. Yeah, because it's been, knock on wood, we have not heard of any dire shortages here in Pennsylvania. But if you look in the Midwest, and I won't name them by name, but there is a large can company that just massively increased the minimum order you would have to order from them to be able to get cans. And there's a lot of breweries now that are just sort of in a crunch to find cans. Fortunately, they're the second largest manufacturer of cans is in Philadelphia. So Pennsylvania is generally pretty well taken care of in the can situation. But largely what we heard wasn't necessarily that I can't get it. It's that it's a heck of a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
And just some weird inverted prices. Like the one brewer was telling me his 12-ounce cans were more expensive than his 16-ounce cans one month. And you were getting, which I didn't even realize this, not being a brewer myself, but you get cans and then you get the lids. And the cans would have a certain language on them and the lids would have a different language on them. And they didn't always fit, which, having a lid that doesn't fit on your can of beer is never good.
Not good.
But apparently you can adjust your equipment and you can make them work. But those are just some of the supply chain issues we're hearing about. It's just, if you can get it, if you can get it at a decent price, people are just, jumping all over whatever they can get.
I know it is challenging, but I think you're right. Like staying connected, finding out what everybody else is doing. I think it is what it is, but everyone will figure out a way, just like they did during COVID. So
yeah, and everyone's so helpful. I know during a couple of can crunches, even before I was with the BOP, some of the larger brewers who had established relationships, they would just buy a whole bunch extra. And then if someone needed, a small order, a small brewery, they would just go and buy directly from that brewery. So there's a lot of, people helping each other out that absolutely don't need to. I mean, it kind of almost doesn't make common sense to help your competitor, but no one really looks at each other as competitors, in this business. It's great to have if you have one brewery in a town, it's better to have three because you're just going to bring more people to the town.
Yeah. And what do you think about the future of, the craft brew industry? Do you think it's growing? Like, what do you see for the industry in the next, 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, so it's a fascinating dynamic. If you look at sort of overall what we term ethanol consumption, whether a person is drinking alcohol of any sort, it's kind of an even pie. Like it's not growing, it's not shrinking. So our concern is, beer has traditionally been a well-known product, but all these new products are coming into the market. The seltzer, I don't know if the seltzer craze is over yet or not. It was certainly, it came on and it was a huge thing. And a lot of our brewers jumped on and, made seltzers because they're apparently not terribly hard to make. Canned cocktails are a really big issue now.
Yeah.
So a spirits-based drink. So you have a drink that's low alcohol, kind of almost like a beer, but it's a spirit and not a beer. So we're kind of like a little concerned about that chipping into, to our,
right.
I've always felt that there's an awesome base of people that are going to drink beer no matter what.
Yeah.
They might have a little bit of bourbon this day, and they might have a little seltzer if it's 125 degrees. But I feel like our core customer is going to be there through thick and thin. And they've certainly showed that they supported everyone during the pandemic and kept everyone on board and open.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think what's great is that people are able to start, the craft brewers and grow, which I think was harder, decades ago. It seems easier now to, pave your own way in a lot of areas. So no, I think it's an exciting time to be part of the industry.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, these guys and gals, they get along so great. They love hanging out. So I think I was the last person on the planet to sign up for Instagram. I got Instagram at the beginning of this year, and I followed every single brewery in our guild. And it's crazy how many times I'll see, oh, this brewer's over doing a collab beer with this brewery, and this brewery's over there. And I'm like, it's just something I've never seen in any other sort of industry where they just love hanging out with each other. They like the collective knowledge. And that's why I think we're always going to overcome supply chain issues, because you always have somebody you had a beer with that can probably loan you whatever you need to get through.
Loan you some cans, exactly.
That's right. Whatever you need, cans, wheat, hops, whatever you need, someone's going to help you out.
Yes. Well, so I guess, as like a final question, when you look at, really a lot of this podcast is about mindset, right? So regardless if you're in the brewery or, any other industry. So what have you learned, because you've had a successful career in, being in politics, being elected, that's a lot. And then now in your role, I guess, what have you learned about mindset on your career path?
You have to have perseverance. You have to have patience in yourself for the mistakes you're going to make, because you're going to make it. Imposter syndrome is the real thing. Like I still wake up some days and think, am I able to run an association? I didn't know how to run an association like 3 or 4 years ago. So you have to accept that it's going to take you time to learn the things, and you have to use the support staff that's around you. But yeah, just keep grinding, and hopefully there won't be another pandemic for 100 years.
Right.
We're doing, I think the time span is every 100 years. So
that's long enough. That's good.
Right. So I'm like, the next one is not going to be my problem. But yeah, just lean on people. I know every time I could identify that someone else was also a solo LLC, I'd be like, okay, well, what do you do about your taxes on this? Or like, can I keep this receipt? Like, just be shameless in asking people questions. Any of my friends that I know from the legislature that are CPAs, I bug the heck out of them. They'll just like, get all the free assistance you can. But just keep grinding and keep persevering. And I think everyone's going to pull through the end of this pandemic.
No, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. And I look forward to seeing you guys around. Like, do great things for the brewery industry. It's very
awesome. We appreciate that. We hope we bring a lot of value and we can keep growing beer here in Pennsylvania.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.